Hello, welcome to Ennara Reacts. Today I'm watching another clip from the Fat Electrician. This one is about a Florida man that ended World War II. Apparently. Marcus McDilda. So let's see what that's about.
I'm telling you right now, it's not clickbait. I will lay out the case that a Florida man BS'd his way into convincing the Japanese to surrender, and I'll probably end up ranting about communism along the way. Today we're talking about Marcus Elmo McDilda, a 23-year-old P-51 pilot that was shot down over Japan, and in order to save his own life, proceeded to lie his ass off so much and so well that he was labeled a very important person by the Japanese government, flown to Tokyo, and interviewed by one of the heads of the Japanese nuclear programs. Through a string of events, his web of lies penetrate all the way to the chambers of the Japanese Supreme War Council while they're discussing whether or not Japan should surrender. And it is here that they become, at a minimum, a contributing factor in their decision, if not the straw that broke the camel's back, and we're going to get into it right after a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Supremacy World War III, a free-to-play online PvP strategy-based game available on mobile and desktop. It is based on a World War III type scenario where you can pick your own country, go to war, or my personal favorite setting, you can have the American Civil War mode where you get to pick a state inside the United States and decide which other states you want to attack. It's always fun to imagine one state goes rogue and become communist, which surely would never happen in real life. So if you want to give it a try, I'll have a link and a code down below. When you use my code, you're going to unlock a free railgun weapon system to start kicking ass right out of the gate. Let's get back to the video. Our story begins on August 8th, 1945, and our main character, Marcus McDilda, a 23-year-old P-51 fighter pilot from Florida, has the day off. Some of the other fighter pilots in his unit are getting ready to go out on a strafing run over Osaka, and one of these pilots, as they're all, getting ready, they're getting in the planes, he's like, I can't do this right now. I've got battle fatigue. I can't do it. At which point, Marcus McDilda makes a critical error. He commits the cardinal sin in the US military. He volunteers.
What an idiot!
So he goes, he hops in this other guy's plane, it's already fueled up, has ammo, it's ready to go. They take off on this mission over Osaka. While they're executing the mission, he gets shot down. He survives, he crash lands in the ocean. Presumably he's floating around in the ocean for a little while, then the Japanese roll up and pluck his ass out of the water. Now he's captured.
That was
Lovely.
Okay, if you've been watching my channel for a while, or if you just know literally anything about World War II, the last people that you would want to be captured by in World War II were the Japanese. And to make things worse, it's 1945. We are at the ass end of World War II when Japanese desperation is at its peak. So not only is he now captured by the last people you want to get captured by, he's captured by the last people you want to get captured by at the worst possible time when they're at their most desperate. Okay, like I said, never volunteer for anything. Regardless, he is now captured. They make their way to shore. Once they get to shore, they blindfold him and they have to walk him through the city in Osaka to get to the police military headquarters. Obviously, this creates a spectacle for all the civilians on the street. Bear in mind, these same civilians are being propagandized to believe that Americans are monsters that are coming to kill them all, and they are highly encouraged to fight them to the death. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you that the mob of civilians and the MPs beat the dog shit out of him while he's blindfolded the entire way to the police station.
Lovely.
They get there, he gets strapped down to a chair, and the interrogation begins. The questions start off pretty much exactly how you think they would. Like, hey, you got shot down in a P-51. Tell me everything you know about the P-51. Marcus lies about everything, just making up. Whatever they want to know, he's making up a stat. He's giving them the wrong answer, but he's acting like it's the truth. Then, after he's answered all the questions they want answers to, they leave. A little bit of time goes by, he's still in the room by himself, strapped to a chair. Eventually, they come back in and they just beat the shit out of him all over again. Then they ask him the same questions over again. And this goes on for hours. They come in, they beat the shit out of him, they ask him the same questions. They're just trying to see if he gives a different answer after an ass whooping to see if he's lying about something, to figure out how credible his answers actually are. Then they come back in and they're like, how many P-51s are stationed on Iwo Jima, which is where he took off from? And he's gonna lie, obviously, and he's gonna make that lie a greater number than there actually are because he wants to be as scary as possible to the enemy. So he says 300. At which point the military officer pulls out an aerial reconnaissance photo showing there's only 150 P-51s on Iwo Jima, and they beat the shit out of him again for lying. Okay, they're playing mind games with him. They want to mess him up to get real information out of him. They want him thinking in the back of his head every time they ask a question, oh shit, they probably know the real answer, and if I don't tell them the truth, I'm gonna get beat again. That way he gives them real intel. At least that's what the Japanese are trying to do with this interrogation. The problem is they're missing some context clues as to who they're fucking with, and the main one being his face. I mean, look at Marcus McDilda's face. Does that look like a face that you could trust? Absolutely not. I'm not trying to badmouth the guy, but I mean, just look at that. That is a smile that a toddler gives you when you're like, did you poop your pants? And they're like, no. You're not getting in that guy's head. That guy just looks like he fucks with people for fun. Regardless, this goes on literally all day and into the night. Just like they come in, they ask questions, he lies his ass off, they come back in, they beat the shit out of him, they ask him more questions. It just keeps going and going and going for hours upon hours. And then the Japanese must think they have this guy on the ropes because the questions start getting weird and oddly specific when one of the officers comes in and says, "Tell me everything you know about the atomic bomb." And this throws a wrench in Marcus's plan because he doesn't know anything about the atomic bomb. Like, he doesn't even know enough to lie and bullshit to make it seem like he knows what he's talking about, so he tells him the truth. I don't know anything. Okay, important context, it's nighttime on August 8th. August 6th, 2 days prior, America just nuked Hiroshima. And at this point, technically Japan isn't even sure yet that they were nuked. I mean, obviously they knew they were hit with a massive bomb, but they didn't know if it was an actual nuclear warhead yet or not. They had their nuclear engineers out at Hiroshima sifting through the rubble, trying to determine if it was in fact a nuclear weapon, and America had figured out how to do it. And the scientists would confirm that it was a nuclear bomb by August 9th, but at this point, they don't know that yet, so the Japanese are looking for literally any intel whatsoever, even if it's just him confirming that, yeah, that was a nuke that we dropped on Hiroshima. But the problem is, Marcus is a random-ass fighter pilot stationed on Iwo Jima, 750 miles away from Hiroshima.
I just got here.
He doesn't know shit. Not only does he not know anything about nuclear weapons specifically, he might not even realize that Hiroshima was hit with some new type of weapon. He might have not even heard that yet. He has no clue what they're talking about, but they just keep kicking his ass and asking him questions about the atomic bomb.
Never start with the head. The victim gets all fuzzy. See?
And this goes on for a while, and then eventually they come back in the room, but this time there's a different Japanese officer with him, and this guy's a general, and he's carrying a fucking katana. Okay, presumably the whole vibe is just like, now the big boss is coming in here to show the kids how it's done. He pulls this katana out, cuts open Marcus's lip, and then tells him, and I quote, "If you don't tell me about the bomb, I'll personally cut your head off."
Bomb, 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 bomb. You gonna arrest me?
So now Marcus is sitting there, still strapped to the chair, bleeding everywhere. He's got this new gash in his lip, bleeding all over the place, and he's like, shit, what do? I don't know anything, and they're about to cut my head off. And it's at this point, he has his Slumdog Millionaire moment where he just pulls every deep memory he has and concocts a giant pile of bullshit to tell this guy. He remembers one of his military buddies that everybody had nicknamed the Brain because he had a PhD in chemistry one day trying to explain the theory of what a nuclear weapon would look like to all the other average Joes. So he combines whatever he can remember from that conversation with just a bunch of random knowledge from whatever he remembers from taking physics and chemistry back in high school, and this is what he comes up with. This is a direct quote. As you know, when atoms are split, there's a lot of pluses and minuses released. Well, we've taken these and put them inside of a huge container and separated them with a lead shield. When the box is dropped out of a plane, we melt the lead shield and the pluses and minuses come together. When that happens, it causes a tremendous bolt of lightning and the atmosphere rolls back. It brings about a tremendous thunderclap which knocks down everything beneath it. Okay, complete bullshit, just making it up. Like, I don't know, man, there's protons and electrons and then we separate them and then they come back together and they clap together and make a lightning bolt and then everybody's dead. That's the atomic bomb. Okay, but we got to put this into context, right? You know who else doesn't know anything about atomic bombs? The military police that are interviewing him. On top of that, he's got a southern accent, and the military interpreter for the Japanese, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say English isn't exactly his first language. So it's two people arguing about something they know nothing about with a language barrier. Because of that, they fucking buy it. So now the Japanese think that he knows something. They keep asking more questions, assuming the intel is now correct. They're like, how big is the bomb? Marcus continues to lie his ass off. He's like, oh, fuck, big bomb, big explosion. It's got to be pretty big, right? It's like 36 feet long and 24 feet wide. That's a direct quote. That's what he tells them. And they buy it, which is insane because that doesn't even make sense. 36 feet long is like the length of a school bus, and 24 feet wide would be more than 2 school buses wide. You're not fitting that inside of a fucking plane, but whatever. Confirmation bias is a motherfucker, I guess. They believe him. They start hitting him with more questions. Does America have more than one of these bombs? And he's like, yeah, we have a bunch of them. Where's America going to use this weapon next? And he thinks for a minute. He's like, okay, what's going to sound the most scary? He ends up coming up with 2 cities, Tokyo, which is the capital, and Kaido, which is like the spiritual capital of Japan. It's got all the important landmarks and all the important like religious sites and everything else. Very important to the culture of Japan. So that's what he says. Tokyo and Kaido. Tokyo's supposed to be bombed in the next couple of days. Hearing this, the general rushes out of the room, sends a message straight to Tokyo, warning them of the impending attack, which is kind of important because you know who's in Tokyo? The Emperor and the rest of the Supreme War Council. From here, Marcus McDilda is labeled a very important person by the Japanese military and shipped to Tokyo so he can be interrogated by one of the heads of their nuclear program.
Great. Somebody that should be able to tell that you're spewing a bunch of bullshit.
Okay, the Supreme War Council of Japan. You have the Emperor, who's like the head of everything. He's all powerful. He has complete authority over everything. But beneath him is the Supreme War Council, the Big Six, as it's commonly referred to, which is basically the 6 people actually running Japan. It's comprised of the Prime Minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of the Army, the Minister of the Navy, the Joint Chief of the Army, and the Joint Chief of the Navy. And right now, at the same moment that Marcus McDilda is getting interrogated in Osaka and or in transit on his way to Tokyo, they are having a meeting in an underground bunker deciding whether or not Japan should surrender, and if so, what are the terms going to be? So right now it's August 9th, 1945, and they've pretty much been in this meeting only stopping to eat and sleep since Hiroshima was bombed on August 6th. Now, the Big Six at this point in time is divided on whether or not they should surrender, and the reason for that is they don't even know for sure that it was a nuclear bomb that hit Hiroshima. They haven't heard back from the scientists yet. Then they hear back from the scientists that it was in fact a nuclear bomb that hit Hiroshima, at which point the conversation shifts from, okay, it was a nuclear bomb, but surely America only has one because they have a nuclear program. They knew how incredibly hard it was to get enriched uranium to be able to make nuclear warheads. So even though America was able to make 1, surely they weren't able to make 2, let alone more. So half of the Supreme War Council's attitude is, we've already weathered the storm, let's just stay in the fight. And then the bad news just keeps rolling in for the Supreme War Council. They get word that a couple of hours ago, right after midnight on August 9th, the USSR invaded Manchuria. And then shortly after that, they get word that an American P-51 pilot was shot down over Osaka and interrogated, and apparently knows all kinds of stuff about the nuclear program, and he says that America has a ton of nuclear bombs and they're going to be nuking Tokyo next. Liar! After hearing this, half the War Council is still not convinced. They refuse to believe that America has multiple nuclear weapons, let alone enough to win the war against Japan. The primary guy pushing for this is the Chief of the Navy's General Staff, Admiral Toyota. So they're in there, they're arguing, they're going back and forth for hours, like, what if this guy's telling the truth? This guy's not telling the truth. And then somebody else walks in with more intel. America just dropped an atomic bomb on Nagasaki, and everybody presumably just kind of looks at Admiral Toyota like, apparently they have more. And apparently the next one's hitting Tokyo, which is where we're at. At this point, the conversation shifts from whether or not we're going to surrender to how we're going to surrender. And again, they're split pretty much down the middle. All the people that were against surrendering are now okay with surrendering, but they have 4 conditions. And those conditions are: the Emperor has to remain in power. All the Japanese military that's overseas has to be de-armed and demobilized by Japan and no one else. All Japanese war criminals have to be taken to trial and punished by Japan, not an international council or any other country. And there will be no occupation of mainland Japan.
What's the point of investigating your own people? Basically, they just want to throw their hands up in the air and be like, okay, the war's over, everybody go home.
Done, everybody. We can collectively take credit for that because we worked as a team.
Which would be the best possible outcome for Japan, so why are the other 3 people on the Supreme War Council voting against it? Well, it's because they're realistic and they know that's never going to happen. America's not going to let you be like, okay, the war's over, everybody go home, and then you go back to Japan, nobody gets in trouble, and then you rebuild your military and try to Pearl Harbor us again. Like, it's just unrealistic. No. Because at this point, America had already issued the Potsdam Agreement last month in July, which basically said Japan's going to have an unconditional surrender, and that's the only way that this war USSR's ending. So the other 3 people on the Supreme War Council are advocating, instead of having 4 conditions, which is completely unrealistic, they just want 1 condition, and that is the condition that the emperor remains in power, because the emperor at this point of time is both the spiritual and the government leader. He's basically the son of a god leading Japan. Like, if Japan loses the emperor, they lose their entire cultural identity. He's very important to the Japanese people as a whole, so that's what they want. That's, if they could get that, that would be good enough. But the other 3 aren't going for it. The debate goes on all day long. It is complete gridlock, and by 2 a.m. on August 10th, 1945, they finally have to call in the emperor to break the tie. And he votes on the 1 condition surrender, that he remains in power.
Who saw that coming? I did.
And that's that. Japan is now surrendering on the singular condition that the emperor remains in power, and shortly after that, later in the morning on August 10th, 1945, Douglas McDilda finally makes it to Tokyo and is interviewed by somebody in charge of their nuclear program. He walks inside this interrogation office. There's a civilian there. He's got on a suit, a tie. He introduces himself and he's like, "I'm a graduate of City College in New York. I'm most interested in hearing your story about the atomic bomb." So Marcus gets on his lion face and repeats his line of bullshit that he told to the military police, and within like 2 minutes, this nuclear engineer is just like, you don't know anything about this, do you? No, nothing. I literally just made it all up so they didn't cut my head off, which is what they said they were gonna do. Yeah, that makes sense. Here, according to all the documentation that we have, they then proceeded to have a civil, friendly conversation for a little while, and then he got sent to a different jail cell where he never got his ass beat again. The dude is just, he maxed out the charisma skill tree, okay? So now the Japanese know that this guy was full of shit, or at least he doesn't actually understand how nuclear fission works, which, you know, for a fighter pilot, that would make sense. But he was right about America having more bombs because they just bombed Nagasaki, and he could be right that America has even more, and they're gonna be bombing Tokyo tomorrow, which is what he said, so it doesn't change their decision to surrender. They still are willing to surrender to the American government. On August 12th, the American government comes back to their 1 condition surrender and says, no, it's going to be an unconditional surrender. To which the Empire of Japan agrees, and by August 15th, 1945, Emperor Hirohito briefs the Japanese people over radio waves where he tells them that Japan is having an unconditional surrender because, and I quote, a new and utmost cruel bomb. Buh! The real reason that Japan surrendered was actually because the USSR invaded Manchuria. Buh! Oh my god, I hate this stupid commie talking point. You know what? I got time today, actually.
And here we go.
Yes, Einstein, Japan, the one military in World War II that was world-renowned for never giving up, fighting till the bitter end, and be willing to die rather than dishonor themselves on the battlefield, surrendered their entire country because the USSR invaded, let me check my notes, northeastern China, 1,200 miles away from mainland Japan. Makes perfect fucking sense, especially when you take into consideration there's an ocean in between China and Japan, and the USSR doesn't have a fucking navy to move their troops.
What's wrong? Can't swim.
Now, to be intellectually honest, there was in fact a plan on how the USSR was going to move their troops from China into mainland Japan should it come to that, but that was Operation Hula, where the United States Navy was going to ferry your asses across the ocean, and you're not going to be willing to admit that because the entire reason you like this talking point is so you can show America bad, communism good. But it actually was because of the shock factor, because the Soviet Union and Japan had a non-aggression pact, so they had no idea that this attack was coming. But
I'm not done yet.
Okay, first of all, having a non-aggression pact with one of the worst actors in World War II isn't the flex that you think it is. Kind of like you had a non-aggression pact and a secret agreement with Nazi Germany to invade Poland, and then people are like, no, they didn't invade Poland together, it wasn't planned, they just both conveniently did it at the same time and then threw a fucking victory parade together after they conquered the entire fucking country. Isn't the flex that you think it is. Show the pictures of the Nazis and the Soviet Union having a victory parade together in Poland, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Secondly, they absolutely knew it was coming because the Soviet Union denounced the Japanese USSR non-aggression pact on April 5th, 1945, 3 months fucking prior, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out when somebody goes, hey, remember that agreement we had to never ever fight? Yeah, that's off. Yeah, shocking that they would attack you right after doing that. I know, I bet everybody was surprised.
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
With that being the case, if they surrendered exclusively because of the USSR, why didn't they just surrender back in April? Better yet, why didn't they surrender between the 11-hour gap between Manchuria getting invaded and the second bomb hitting Nagasaki? How come the Emperor had to come in and break a tie like 24 hours later, even after the second bombing at Nagasaki? Okay, if you want to say the USSR was part of their decision to surrender, sure, absolutely, I'm right there with you. It was definitely an added factor on top of the sun rising multiple times a day on several occasions, for sure. But the main reason was the fact that America figured out how to drop a fucking star out of an airplane. Saying stupid shit like Japan didn't surrender because of nuclear bombs, they actually surrendered because of the USSR invading Manchuria is like saying, oh, my cousin Ronnie had the flu and then he died. Oh, really? Your cousin Ronnie died from the flu? Yeah, for sure. It was also the car wreck when he careened off a cliff. No, your cousin Ronnie died in a fucking car wreck. He also had the flu, okay? It might have been a small contributing factor. It's not what we're writing down on the death certificate. Okay, and here's the dumbest part. Let's just say that you're right. For the sake of argument, you're not right, but let's just say that you are, and Japan actually surrendered because the USSR invaded northeastern China 1,200 miles away from their mainland. Let's just say that's what actually happened, okay? Even if that were true, it's still America's fault because the USSR wouldn't have survived till 1945 if it wasn't for Lend-Lease, and that's not according to me, that's according to Joseph Stalin, the leader of the USSR, when he said, and I quote, "The most important things in war are machines. The United States is a country of machines. Without the machines we received through Lend-Lease, we would have lost the war." So take your stupid America bad revisionist history commie talking points and shove them up your ass. I'm sorry, I'm getting horrifically sidetracked. I know there's a lot of normal people that are watching this like, oh, surely the Fat Electrician's being dramatic. There's not a significant portion of people that actually believe that. Trust me, there are. They'll be in the comments down below. They're in comments all over the internet. They're absolutely everywhere. I promise you they're real. I'm not making it up. Anyways.
Almost lost my cool there.
August 15th, 1945, the Emperor gives a speech. He announces that Japan is surrendering. That doesn't become official on paper and signed until September 2nd, but pretty much from the moment he made that announcement, effectively all tensions ceased. The war was over. Because of that, Marcus McDilda is released from his internment camp on August 30th, 1945. He then has to go to trial to testify against Japanese war criminals because the original internment camp that he was captured at in Osaka, he is one of only 2 airmen to survive that internment camp because after the Emperor announced his surrender, the man in charge of that internment camp elected to have all of his POWs executed. So while being able to say that Marcus's lies contributed to the Japanese surrender is speculation at best, it is an absolute fact that it, at a minimum, saved his own life, which is why he is commonly cited as a case study example as to why and how torture doesn't work, because believe it or not, people that are about to get their heads chopped off will say literally anything they have to not get their heads chopped off. Shocking, I know. Regardless, after World War II, Marcus McDilda would return home to Florida, he would marry his wife, they would have 3 kids, and he got to live happily ever after. And that is the story of how a 23-year-old P-51 pilot, aka the Florida man of World War II, created an elaborate lie to save his own life, and that lie created a piece of intel that America was going to nuke Tokyo and had a bunch of more nuclear weapons, and through a weird twist of fate, that exact piece of intel made it into the Supreme War Council of Japan's chambers at the exact moment that they were debating on whether or not America had more nuclear weapons, and it may or it may not have pushed them over the edge and forced them to surrender. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch. Quack bang out. I'm telling you, you have to follow the cardinal rules of the military. Never stand when you could sit, never sit when you could lay down, never be awake when you could be asleep, and never volunteer for anything.
Well, there you go. The Florida man BS artist that apparently influenced the surrender of Japan. Possibly. Okay. I'm not sure why you should never volunteer for anything. Is that like related to like a Murphy's Law type kind of thing, you know? Anything that can go wrong will, and at the most inopportune moment kind of thing. Or no good deed goes unpunished, or my dad used to have a whole poster of those laws. Anywho, I will put a link to the original video in the description. And thanks for watching. Remember to hit like and subscribe.